Good afternoon. Welcome to the California Department of Aging and Alzheimer's Association check-in call. This is the fourth in our now five-part series, all about friends and family caring for each other during this pandemic. Today, we're going to focus on a topic, caring for yourself while you're caring for someone else, stress relief and respite, self-care while you're caregiving. And I have to say, this topic is coming right on time for me. I am definitely feeling the weight of all that's happening personally and professionally right now, and I'm so glad to be with this community and with these leaders this next hour. To kick us off, we have our partner joining us once again. We're so grateful for your time and your leadership and your partnership, Assemblymember Adreen Nazarian, to give us a particular welcome. Adreen.
Thank you, Kim. I think we're going to need to dub these shows the Kim and Adreen conversations as well. I don't know, maybe some kind of a radio show we can start after this whole thing. First and foremost, want to say thank you. Thank you for the wonderful work that you're all doing in putting these conversations together. Very timely, very important. I myself, as Kim just said, am finding myself in a situation where for the last few years with my father's Alzheimer's and my mother being of an age where, even though she looks young, my siblings and I have been so concerned about the weight that my father's condition is putting on her, and have been trying to get her to have a caregiver come in, even if it's for 2 hours a week. And she was extremely resistant. And just the beginning of this year, she started accepting the idea that she might want to have someone come in and help. And as soon as she was okay with it, we found ourselves in this pandemic and this crisis. And so she is now, without much support from us, especially because of the physical distancing aspect, is continuing to carry the weight. So it's very timely, it's very important, and it's something that I think as more of our parents' generation, grandparents' generation are finding themselves alone in these circumstances, it's critical that we find ways of finding the support that they need, because between the isolation and not being able to get assistance, it could be extremely costly and difficult. That said, we're also looking at a horrendous economic downturn coming our way. We saw what happened 12 years ago, 11 years ago, during our previous recession, where we lost 90% of our funding for respite care. So this is an unprotected service area, and so it's going to be very critical that we continue these conversations and build on it so that we can figure out how to better address this issue in especially the years and months ahead. So Kim, I look forward to continuing my partnership with you and the administration, and give the idea of Kim and Adreen Live some thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Only if we have guest speakers as expert and as wonderful to follow us and really do the heavy lifting of bringing us together today. As some of the members said, we are facing really serious times, as everybody here knows, but you have taken the first step by joining us today to carve out some time to find some relief, some respite, maybe even some joy, some meditation, all that is so critical for our mental health, our physical health, not just surviving, but thriving in this time. So thank you for all of you for being here today. Before I introduce our terrific speakers, I want to just remind you where we are in this series. We are on our fourth part series in caregiving. We're actually added a fifth one based to the feedback we heard from everybody. Next Wednesday will be on grief and loss in the era of COVID. And once again, we have California's experts, who of course are national experts, in helping us all navigate as we are losing loved ones, as we are having to find new ways to be with people at death and commemorate them, given the physical distancing. It is all important that we pull together on that. So join us next Wednesday for that topic. And then the week after, we are going to do this series again, if you will, but in Mandarin Chinese and in Spanish, And it will not just be a translation, but it will be truly a cultural conversion to be led by leaders from those communities, by and for and with those communities. So we are thrilled to be able to do that and look forward to helping, ask your help in getting the word out in coming weeks as we kick off the week of May 20th with Mandarin and Spanish caregiving calls. You can also hear the past 3 weeks calls where we talked about caring for your loved one in your home, caring for your loved one afar, and essential conversations, advanced care and other planning for serious illness. All those last 3 weeks are at our engageca.org website. We are constantly adding new resources there. We just added ASL COVID resources. And another improvement I'm happy today, I should have mentioned this at the top, is we have captioning. So if you are watching on Zoom, you can click the closed caption button and our captioner is live captioning this for us. So wanting again to always make our conversations and the information and resources is accessible to as many people as possible. So with that, I'll give you one last thing to do, which is send in your questions. We love your questions so that this is a conversation. You can send them to our Engage email box, which is engage@aging.ca.gov. We will take those questions and answer as many as we can on the air and follow up with you as well. So send in your questions, please. Today, we are going to have really the benefit of the deep wisdom and experience of two standouts in the field. First, Martha Ranon, who's the Executive Vice President at Southern Caregiver Resource Center, who began her journey caring for her 93-year-old great aunt with dementia. So thank you, Martha, for coming to share all that you have learned with us. And then our other presenter is Dr. Donna Benton, a research associate professor of gerontology and a director of the LA Caregiver Resource Center at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. And of course, I would be remiss to mention, she is also a member of the Master Plan for Aging Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and I think serves on the most subcommittees. I think she's on research, long-term services and supports, and is a founding member of the Equity Work Group. So Dr. Benton, thank you for your service in addition to your leadership. With that, I am going to sit back, take a moment of self-care myself, and listen to the words of Martha Ranon and Dr. Donna Benton. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction and really for the opportunity to be here with you today. My name is Martha Ranon and I am with the Southern Caregiver Resource Center. We are a nonprofit organization and we focused on the caregiver. What is great about this service and this organization is that we provide all of our services for free. So if you are caring for the well-being of someone else, specifically if they are elderly, they need assistance with at least 2 activities of daily living, maybe that person that you're caring for has some cognitive deficiencies like, for example, dementia or memory loss or Alzheimer's disease, then we are here for you. We serve all of San Diego County as well as Imperial County. And even though that might be further down south in California, for some of you who might be listening, we are part of a statewide group of caregiver resource centers. And so really it's up and down the state that we have different sites, different locations where you can access our services and get connected. So I just wanted to say that in case anyone is interested in connecting, I can definitely give you that information at the end and before we convene. So there is a lot that I really want to talk to caregivers out there. And it's just not caregivers, but it's those individuals who might know someone who is a caregiver or who might be thinking, I might be caring for my fill in the blank, right? Maybe my mom or my relative. And what we're finding is that a lot of caregivers nowadays are in that caregiving, in that sandwich generation. They might be caring for children and their school-aged children, and they're also caring for their elderly relatives or spouses, and themselves are working at least 20 hours outside the home. That sounds like a lot, and that can be very daunting, especially because caregiving is not easy. We heard earlier from Assemblymember Nazarian that it's really challenging to try to provide assistance and to have to come together to offer help And now that we're dealing with this pandemic, it's even more challenging. So this is why I wanted to center my talk today on really talking about developing a positive mindset. And I'm going to walk you through some steps that I hope you can jot down and share with others, share with your family, with your friends, because I think we're all feeling the stress and the really the anxiety of what's happening. As much as we try to limit the idea of what's going on, we really cannot ignore it. We see it every day. I mean, we're all socially isolating, hopefully, so that we can flatten that curve. So obviously, we're all in this together. So I'm going to start with ways to do this is by focusing on these key points. So the first one is developing a positive mindset, and then following by self-awareness, shifting mindset from negative to positive, learning from our challenges, and then connecting with others. Now, I do want to make sure that all of our listeners out there know that if they do have any questions, that they please submit a question to either by email to engage@aging.ca.gov, or you can submit a question in the Zoom toolbar. It's the Q&A icon on the toolbar in the Zoom platform. All right, so let's get started. And so I asked you earlier, or I mentioned earlier, we're talking about developing a positive mindset. So before I begin, I just want you to take a look at yourself for a little bit, just step back. And I want to ask you, how are you feeling? Just think about how are you feeling right now? Feel free to jot it down and just maybe have that thought in your head. Are you calm? Are you anxious? Are you stressed? Are you juggling many things like all of us are during this time? But the reason why I want to ask you this is because many times when we hear that question, automatically we respond with, I'm fine. Everything's fine. And we know that's not necessarily the case, right? We're not all just fine, especially now. So I want you to really dig deeper and really think about how are you feeling physically. I know that when I am physically stressed, I might maybe get some back pains or maybe my head hurts. And so, of course, in all of us, stress manifests itself differently. But when we are aware of those physical changes or stressors, we might be a little bit more inclined to say, okay, I just need to take a break. I just need to sit down. Maybe, I take an aspirin if I have a headache. But now how about when we are emotionally stressed? How are you feeling during those times? And I ask this question because during this time of uncertainty, a lot of us are going through a range of emotions. Maybe in the morning we wake up fine, and then by mid-afternoon we're really stressed. Or maybe it's the other way around. So it's really important that we get a hold of our emotions, but really become aware. And the reason for that is like I tell some of our caregivers and even my children, I have little kids that, sometimes they have a challenge, and I say, if I don't know what the issue is, I can't help you resolve it. So if I know that I am mentally bogged down, then maybe I know what I need to do to calm myself. So I want you to imagine now at this time having having a face in mind of when you are happy. Usually we think of that iconic happy face, right? That emoji that is happy. And of course, a sad face would be that yellow face with, frown maybe. And so it's really important that with everything that's going on right now, with all of the stressors and negativity and uncertainty, that if we are feeling in a negative, if we're in a negative frame of mind, then when we are making choices, when we are making decisions, they tend to be clouded by that negativity. Let me give you an example. If I am in a bad mood and somebody approaches me, automatically I might have a tendency to just lash out and respond in a negative way. And maybe that person is thinking, wow, I didn't even do anything to you. So they're going to be defensive and they're going to respond maybe in a negative way. So now we have two people engaged in a very negative relationship, right? That is something that it's very true with what's happening right now. I'm hearing stories, I'm hearing, people engaging in negative ways because they are upset and they're walking around in this negative frame of mind. But what happens when we shift that to more positive way? If I say, I know we are all practicing social isolation and no one wants to be, cooped up for a long time. I know a couple of people, my friends especially, are saying I'm having cabin fever and I just want to get out and I want to go to a restaurant and engage. But if I understand why it is that we are socially isolating, that we are trying to flatten the curve, that I'm trying to protect my elderly neighbors, that I'm trying to protect my relatives from exposing them to the virus, then maybe that has a different way of computing in my mind, right? So now with that in mind, it's really being aware, that self-awareness. I know myself best. You know yourself best. You know that person that you're caring for best. And I know that I am a more productive, happier individual when I wake up in the morning. I have more energy. I'm ready to tackle my list of to-dos. As the day goes on, I seem to be more stressed. More things are happening, more things are getting on my plate. And I know we've talked earlier, we were talking about just homeschooling and distance learning and having to juggle that as parents and working. There are not a lot of boundaries right now. All those boundaries are blurring. And so I know that towards the end of the day, I'm probably not going to take on new tasks. So then if I know that, I am able to plan my work around that, right? If somebody says, hey, can you do a presentation? I probably am going to request that is done earlier rather than later in the day. Along with self-awareness and shifting our mindset, we really need to understand, as caregivers especially, I was introduced earlier and I did care for my great aunt when she had dementia, and she was 93 when I started caring for her. And I had never done this in my life before. There was never a time when I said, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of my elderly, and this is how it's going to be. I never imagined myself being in that situation, like a lot of caregivers, I'm sure, don't imagine themselves being in that situation. So how do we do this? How do we go about, caring for others? Well, a lot of us do it by trial and error. We just kind of learn what works and learn what doesn't work. And I want to remind caregivers that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not have all the answers, and even to feel frustrated and maybe a little bogged down. And that's where it's important to really know where you are mentally as well as physically and emotionally, because when you do have a challenge that you just can't resolve during that time, then maybe you need to ask for help. Unfortunately, a lot of caregivers are reluctant to ask for help, and there are a lot of reasons why. Some of them are the feeling of guilt. It's my responsibility to take care of my mom, so I'm not going to ask for help. But if I know my limitations, and if I know that I cannot become an effective caregiver because I'm stressed or I'm bogged down or I'm overwhelmed, then it's not fair for that person. So I I really want to encourage our caregivers to understand that we are human, that we all make mistakes. It's learning about our mistakes from those mistakes that is important, and it's okay. Um, it's also important to connect with other individuals, and this is where things like support groups and counseling comes into play. We have a couple of support groups in both English and Spanish for caregivers who are interested in connecting with others. But it's not just about connecting, it's really about developing a network of support, a network of exchanging ideas and really learning from others' experiences. So it's really important to connect with positive individuals, especially if you can learn something from them. Now, I don't know if you remember when we were, I think it's in elementary school, and I know a couple of people have them in their jobs because I've seen those mood charts, right? When you kind of track how you're feeling and can let others know if you're in a good mood or in a negative mood. It's important for us to have those, especially now. You know, maybe it's important to do a color chart to let people know in our household how we're feeling, or maybe a mood scale, you know, and a number from 1 to 10, like when we go to the doctor's office. How is your pain? A number from 1 to 10. You know, is it a 5? Is it a 1? Is it a 10? Maybe that's important to maybe put on our refrigerators to let others know, hey, I'm having a hard time today. I need to go for a walk. So that can be an idea. Now, it's as we go along with this situation of the pandemic, it's important to remember to ourselves, our self-care, not forget about us. I know that you're going to be hearing more about self-care. I just want you to remember that sometimes when we embrace a change and are less resistant to the change, then we're able to adapt easier. Resilience is what I'm talking about. This is definitely a game changer for all of us. This is something we've never been in or experienced before. And a lot of us don't like to change. We don't like change. And this is forcing us to do that. But if we accept that this is what has to be done for a greater outcome, then it might make that challenge that I'm going through a little bit easier to digest. Focus on the present, one day at a time. You know, again, with so much uncertainty, there's really no point in talking about something that we can't control. I know we're hearing a lot about reopening, and we're hearing a lot about stages, but for now, at least in a very individualistic level, one day at a time is important. My son the other day reminded me that, hey, you know, and I really appreciate him saying this. I was feeling very stressed during that time, and he said, you know, the good thing about this whole coronavirus situation is that we get to spend more time together. And that really shifted my mindset. And I thought, you know, I'm going to make the best of our time together, even if it's challenging, even if all we do today is just sit and do a puzzle together. At least we have that time. And then a couple of times, you know, it's important to find the humor in what we do. It's important to allow ourselves to laugh. Maybe you have friends that have other ways that they can elicit a laugh from you, maybe telling you a story or sharing some videos. That happens with my friends. They send me videos of their children or of their pets, and it's nice to have a laugh, especially during this time. As caregivers, it is very important not to think that we can do this alone. Caregiving should not be done alone. It really should allow us to connect with others and ask for help. And we are here to help collectively, as an organization, as humans, as all of us who are caregivers and have gone through this situation. we can connect with others and we don't have to do it alone. You know, the social isolation is definitely in place, but social interaction is not forbidden. It's not, you know, it's not illegal to socially interact with other people. And now we have all this technology where we can do that, you know, through Zoom, through the phone, through FaceTime. So engage with your friends, with your family. Maybe you schedule some family meetups, or you know, a way to connect at the end of the day. I do that with my friends, to sometimes just to vent, to get advice, to laugh, to cry, to really share and ask about our lives. It's really important to do that. So I just want to remind you that, again, you don't have to do this alone. We are here to help. Our organization's website is scrc.care, and our number is 858-268-4432. We're in San Diego, but we are also a part of a statewide system of caregiver resource centers, and you can visit Caregiver California, all spelled out all together, .org, caregivercalifornia.org, to connect to all of the different caregiver resource centers throughout the state. So this is all I have for now. Of course, I welcome questions. If anyone wants to submit a question, again, feel free to go to engage at aging.ca.gov, or in the Q&A icon in the Zoom toolbar.
Great. Okay, well, this is Donna Benton, and I'm just going to jump right in and from Martha. You know, one of the things that, you know, Martha pointed out, and I love acronyms, and someone said to me one day when they said, how are you feeling today, Donna? And I said, oh, I'm just fine. And she was a close friend, and she looked me dead in the eyes and said, you know what FINE stands for? I'm like, no, you know, it means I'm okay. She goes, no, it stands for feelings inside not expressed. And I think that's one of the things that Martha was trying to point out to all of us, is that if we don't take a inventory of really how we are feeling inside, sometimes it's a little harder to get help. And my friend that day knew that I was not really feeling fine. So, and there are a lot of acronyms. So today I'm gonna do what I call my 5 M's around self-care, because as I said, I like acronyms. And because it's May, and you know, in this month of May, I had looked up a quote. I said, you know, I wanted to know what can we say around May? And there was this quote that said, all things seem possible in May. And while we're in a pandemic right now, we know that things will be changing, and we will have a new normal during this time. We'll still have our physical distancing, and there'll be other restrictions to help keep us and the people we care for, and just the general public safe. But we know that all things are possible in May, because it's new beginnings, and things are around us. And so let's kind of keep to that idea. So when I thought of M, May starts with the letter M. And I thought to myself, what are the kind of things that I'm beginning to miss right now in this month? And I started thinking, oh gosh, I miss malls and movie theaters, meetings that are not virtual. Some of you may not miss meetings at all, and that's perfectly understandable. I miss Mondays, because I can't tell what day of the week it is anymore. And really, I miss Monday Night Football, because it used to tell me that it was a Monday. So we have a lot of things that we may be missing right now, but some of the things that we don't have to miss for ourselves is that we can find maybe some alternative ways of, while we're physically distant, making some new traditions during this time of the pandemic. And I think some of these traditions are things that we can continue to carry over even post-pandemic, because things are going to be changing, but we're going to need some new ways of being close, even if we have to be a little physically apart. So I'm going to talk to you about the 5 M's. So the first one is mail, M-A-I-L, not the other. And if you, the word mail, the reason I put this as an M is because one way that we can connect to each other that we may have forgotten about over time is that we can send an old-fashioned card, letters, postcard, and actually write something out on a piece of paper. And we all have printer paper, probably. You may have some printer paper at home. Don't worry about the kind of paper. Clearly, we can't go out and buy a bunch of thank you cards, but you probably have some cards hanging around. Maybe you even have holiday cards that have been stacking up because you started using email so much that you don't have any. You have a whole bunch of cards around. Use those. We can all use a little holiday spirit right now. And write something. And why is that important? Because when we write, well, research actually shows that the physical act of writing helps to stimulate a different part of our brain that has to do with creativity, it has to do with memory, and also that kind of eye-hand coordination. I, for one, have almost forgotten how to write in cursive, but maybe try to practice. And, you know, maybe we never had the best of handwriting, but that's okay. That's okay. This is not about judging ourselves, but being able to send something that can be received physically. We put the stamp on, and then we're going to be able to get something to someone who can actually open something up, and it's not going to be junk mail. Because pretty much our boxes, if we may have a lot of junk mail around, but it'd be nice to get something physical. So I say during this time, let's go back to the mail service, and we can drop it, you know, the mailbox. You can actually, I still put my mail out on my mailbox so that the mail person can do it. But I know that if you see them walking around, there are different ways that we can get to the mailbox. And maybe it becomes one of your daily walks to find the nearest mailbox and get something in there to mail out to someone. The next thing is, if we're caring for ourselves, we need to, again, look at ways that we may not have be using as much and we have forgotten about. So go back to music. Music has been in our lives probably from birth, when our mothers were humming and to us, and when you were younger, your parents or people around you in some way were just making sounds and cooing in a musical type voice. But as we grow up, music can be associated with a lot of ways that we feel. You know, music changes your mood. When you're happy, you can put on music that helps make you just want to even move around a little more. Or sometimes when we're really sad, we actually put on sad music and get sadder, or we can do the opposite and put on some energetic music. Music hits, again, another part of our brain that helps with our overall feelings and associations, but it isn't direct. And so the fact that we're getting to our brains in an indirect way is real important. And you can put music on in the background while you're doing something. And even if you're not actively listening to your music, it is helping your mood. So fill your house with music again. Look through your music collection. If you don't have a music collection and you can turn on your TV, and maybe if you have a way to get to YouTube, you can YouTube all kinds of music. I found it's just all over the place. But you may have a radio sitting around. Go pull it out from wherever. You probably have some CDs, or you know what? maybe you can't find any of those, but you can still hum and sing and just go back to, in some way, turning your brain off from just thinking, and get some music back to help you feel good and change your mood for the day. Along with music, the next M became movies for me, because movies, meaning that you can watch television, it's the same, but overall, being able to take ourselves away from reality. Right now, you can turn on the TV, you can walk down the street with, keeping distance, talk to everybody on the phone, and we're all talking probably around one thing, the pandemic. But sometimes we need to escape from reality. We just need to turn our brains off and enjoy something that takes us away. And movies and television and the whole visual medium has a way of transporting us to places that, we can't travel right now, but so many TV shows and movies can take us to a different place. Even, like for the last few days, it's been Star Wars. And so you could even go to outer space if you want, but you can get involved in a mystery movie or maybe something romantic and the other thing about movies, go back to a movie that's familiar to you during this time, because there's comfort in tradition. So you may not want to turn on something that that's going to be new, where you're kind of like, oh, this is going to be anxious because I'm not sure how it's going to end. Turn on something that you absolutely know what's going to happen, and you know how it's going to make you feel. It's a good time to go into your humorous things and things that make you laugh, or give you a little bit a jolt away from feeling so stressed and anxious during this time. So reach out, look for movies. And then the other thing is, we're home, and for many of us, meal times are different right now. We may be struggling getting our meals. We may not be cooking the same way. We can't find all of our ingredients, but we can be creative during this time around our meals and enjoy what we do have available. Be present with the meal. Many times caregivers will say, oh, I haven't enjoyed a meal in forever. Well, taking a little bit of time when you're cooking for someone else, and maybe put a little bit aside for yourself, and instead of eating the same thing that you're cooking for your relative, season it a little differently, maybe closer to what you like in the seasoning. And of course, I also say, we can, if you can, and you can order online, and trust me, I've tried to order recently online, and it gets a little frustrating to get food online or get a pizza delivered. But I was successfully able to get cupcakes, and now I can successfully get candy every once in a while delivered. So depending on your diet, I'm not saying, go out and get cupcakes and candy if you can't have that, but you might be able to find something that you can order in that gives you just that little treat in the house. I love dried cranberries, and so I could have a little bag of dried cranberries, and that's my special treat that I just like eating every once in a while. So think about your meals. Think how you can be creative. And the other part about meals is maybe if you were used to going out once or meeting with your friends for Sunday meals together, if you can find a way, either by phone, if you happen to be using the internet, find a way to actually still have those family meals together, or at least talk about the family meals, so that you have that good memory around food traditions, and keep those up, because food sustains us, both literally and emotionally. The fifth M I want to bring up is about mindfulness. And Martha talked a lot about this already, but being present and practicing mindfulness is something that's very important, because it takes us again into where we are right now. And there are a lot of classes available now online the city of LA even has opened up classes that you can take free of charge right online. And I think there's even a phone number you can call where you can just kind of breathe and taking that space that allows you to be a little present where you are and thoughtful about where you are and what you're doing. And that being mindful is something that we kind of think we're doing, but we aren't doing it unless you really have a little bit of practice. So reach out, look for some of those classes that are online or on the phone that are not costing anything, that can teach you a little bit about mindfulness. Some people call it kind of yoga or meditation. There are a lot of different ways of how people describe being mindful, but it's really being present and kind of getting in touch with yourself and your body and your feelings and how you think. And all of the things like music and movies and meals, you can be very present. Finally, during this time, while we're stuck in the house, movement becomes extremely important. The one thing we don't want is to impact our health by just sitting and not moving around enough, but between you and your relative. So make sure you move your body in different ways, not just the have to do type movements, but maybe some fun movements, the stretching, the dancing, the making faces in the mirror at yourself, but being able to exercise your face and each part of your body is very important during this time, and it keeps both your mind and our bodies sharp and healthy and aware of where we are right now, and it'll keep us strong overall. So I think those are my 5 M's: mail, music, movies, meals, mindfulness, and that bonus one is movement. Move around, be active in some way. So as caregivers, I call these self-care, but clearly these are things you're doing for yourself, but you can do with the person you're caring for. You can have any of these activities as a family, because some of us have moved in together and we're all kind of living under the same roof. And each of these are things that we can do across generations. You know, children, they color, they make the cards, help them make the cards, and then you help with the stamps and you get the addresses. You have to actually find people's addresses again. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of email addresses and very few physical addresses, because I used to just go over to my friend's house and I forgot their address. So now you have a reason to call people and say, hey, what is your address? The music, you can feel that in the house, and you can have it, maybe if you're in an intergenerational house right now, you can listen to some music that may be not from your generation and introduce music from your generation or maybe your parents' generation, so that you can begin a kind of a little a music club. Movies, you can share movie time together by saying, we're all going to turn on blah, blah movie or blah, whatever TV show at this time, and then have it be able to talk about it afterwards and talk about a favorite scene or a line, and enjoy the moments in the movie together. Obviously with meals right now, where you can, if you're together with the person you're caring for, try to make those meals maybe before you are kind of just kind of putting the meal down and not taking time to put things on the plate in a colorful way. Add a little color, pull out those, placemats that you're not using anymore that maybe you really enjoyed having. Put on a tablecloth. Make meals a little different during this time, while you're just being together longer than usual. And of course, as I already said, let's try to move. Now, I'm with the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center, and like Martha said, we're part of that statewide system of caregiver resource centers, and we're also part of the area agencies on aging, and we're always collaborating, and we have, many of us have both grants from the state and from our local areas agency on aging. Also, we would like to hear from you, because I'm going to stop talking because we really want to talk to you during this time. So please take a minute, and if you're online, go and select the Q&A icon and submit a question. But if you're not online, you can email us. You can't put a letter in the mail because it will take too long and we won't be on the phone right now. But you can email us at engage@aging.ca.gov. And with that, we're going to open this up to questions.
Great. Well, I just want to thank you so much to Dr. Donna Benton and Maria Ranon for your presentations. We're going to take some questions now, and we have some that came in through the email and the Q&A box. And again, just all your questions are very welcome. So please click that Q&A icon down at the bottom of your screen, and we will read your questions. We have one that is for either of the speakers, and it's asked, what gives you hope during this pandemic? Martha?
Yes, this
Or
is Martha. Yes, I'd be happy to share with you. I really like this question. I am seeing a lot of humanity among all of the chaos that we're living, and that is what gives me hope. I've heard stories even from our caregivers who are saying, you know, thank you so much for just having someone answer the phone. I feel so much better. You know, from people saying the person, and this is a story that I just heard from one of our staff members who was shopping, and in front of her was a man who only had $5 and was trying to buy food, and she paid for his groceries. And that is what fills me with hope, and I really like those human stories.
I would agree with you. I have just read and seen people connecting in new ways. I mean, I like on my block, and I've seen it on many blocks, of people saying, say happy birthday to whoever's in the house right then, and they'll, you know, by beeping or just waving at the window. And so suddenly you're having, in this, you know, we always say it's a large city and you don't know your neighbors. People are beginning to know their neighbors and their special days. And so I think I've really liked that. It's given me a lot of hope that people still are finding ways to connect during this pandemic.
great. Another question that we got is respite care recommended or safe during COVID-19?
That's an excellent question. And, you know, in many ways, this is going to become a personal decision around respite, because we know that it is important to have that ability to take a break. And respite care usually involves letting someone else in your home. And of course, we don't know about that. So if you're fearful or scared or anxious, one thing is it's important to know who the respite care provider is. And if it's coming from a company, they generally, you can call them and find out what precautions they are taking for that respite care provider. How are they giving them personal, you know, PPEs? Do they have the mask? Do they have gloves? Have they been trained in keeping everything, you know, sterile? And then within your own home, you know, making sure the person, you know, everyone's doing temperature checks and all of that. So respite is a little more challenging on a personal basis, but in some ways, there are ways to ask, and then you still have to make that personal decision on if you're going to be feeling comfortable with someone coming in to give you those breaks, that much needed break.
And if I can
So,
jump in there, we at San Diego Southern Caregiver Research Center, we actually have a lot of respite, a budget to provide respite for people who are interested. So if you are able and willing to accept that respite care, then give us a call so that you can take a much needed break.
the same thing in Los Angeles and I think across the board, but it is a difficult decision and a lot of it, you know, you do have to make sure, but I would definitely check with any agency what their procedures are and policies.
Great, thank you guys. We've gotten a couple questions about whether this session is going to be recorded and if people could listen to it again or listen to it later. And I'm happy to say yes, it is being recorded, and the link to it will be on the California Department of Aging webpage, which is www.engageca.org. And you'll be able to go and click on the link and listen to it again, or share it if you're listening to it and you think maybe there's somebody that you know who might want to hear it. So just to reassure you there. We have a question of how do caregivers participate in support groups when they're living in close quarters with their loved one they care for? Maybe like sort of a confidentiality or feeling that freedom to really express how they feel.
Well, you know, and that's really difficult because one of the things for a caregiver support group is you want to be able to say things that express feelings that you may not want the person you're caring for to hear. Sometimes you might be, if you're just on the phone and you can listen in. Some support groups have the chat feature. Besides being just on the telephone, if you're online, so you still might be able to type in what you want to say, and the support group leader can express that to the rest of the group, or the rest of the group can actually see that. If you can look for, maybe you're already in a support group and it may not be a time, but maybe during that time, if your relative is there, if you can find something else for your relative to do during the time you're on the support group, or you let the leader know that, can I speak during the first 10 minutes? Because I know for 10 minutes, my relative can watch TV, or they're going to be, you know, vacuuming or whatever you can get to do so that they can be distracted, and then use that time. So I know it's challenging being able to go out into the yard, or maybe if your relative allows you where it doesn't interfere, it might be the time to go into the restroom and take the call from there. I know sounds strange, but sometimes there's still something core about being able to go into a restroom, and usually most people will not interrupt you while you're in there. So it's a thought.
Hey,
we got to be creative, right?
You do. So we have a couple of questions that address the issue of how do I do this with no family support? So a lot of what we've talked about today are reaching out to family and support networks, but how do you address this topic for those who have no family or personal network?
What we say to caregivers is, you know, we have this notion that our network is just our family. And sometimes we find ourselves, even though we might be coming from a large family, that the family is not necessarily ready or able to offer us that support. So what I say to those caregivers is, we are here. We can be your network of care. We can be your support. It doesn't necessarily have to be a blood relative. It could be your church. It could be your neighbor. It could be your knitting group. I mean, it's really, caregiving is challenging enough by yourself. And so when we have a support group, and it's not necessarily family, that can be fine as well.
Are there virtual support groups available?
Yes, we actually have them
Yes.
at SCRC, and I think Donna might also.
Yes.
We have virtual support groups, and they're active and live, and you can join at any time.
Right. We have telephone, so You don't have to be online, but you have the option of also being online. So either way, you can call in, and they're usually listed on the websites, and almost throughout the state, you can find a support group
Great.
at varied times. So that's why it's important to
And
look
I believe
around
we
and
have the
call.
link to the Caregiver Resource Centers on the California Department of Aging website, which again is www.engageca.org. We have some other very practical questions, like how do I care for someone at home while I have to go out shopping?
Yes.
That probably has different elements of, shopping during COVID is also a scary thing to do.
What we just put out a a bulletin offering caregivers an option that might help for those who are caring for someone, and it's not easy for them to transport an individual to go shopping. So there are several things. If you're talking about, let's say, grocery shopping, there are a lot of different ways that you can get those delivered. You might elicit the support of a neighbor. I know I have a friend, and it's funny because she'll ask me, hey, I'm going shopping. Do you need anything? And she will shop for me. And I'm not even in that caregiving situation right now, but she understands that we're trying to minimize the exposure. So she says, I'm already going. Do you need anything? So it could be as simple as asking a neighbor for that.
And during this time, people are really asking how they can help. So maybe you didn't know your neighbors as well, but there are a lot of the next door apps and things where people are saying, can I be helpful? Because I happen to be going out shopping. So people are going out, and that, unfortunately, you may not be able to get away for a little while, but there are, I think what Martha's saying, those are some of the ways we have to be a little creative right now.
Great. So we've hit our 2:00 mark, and that's it for our call today. But I want to encourage those on the phone to reach out to the Caregiver Resource Centers, to go to the engageca.org webpage, and as well, find your local Caregiver Research Center at caregivercalifornia.org. That's all one word, caregivercalifornia.org. And thank you so much, Donna and Martha, for your presentations today. And we hope to see you all next week. It's a different time. It's at 2:30, and we're going to be discussing grief and loss in the time of COVID. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.